This is CBC Here and Now.
Your government has a solid, credible, strategic plan to emerge from the burden of having too little funds to pay the annual bills.
We can't have a centralised board that will forget about parts of our province.
Virtual care has a role to play, for sure, but it does not replace having a family physician.
We didn't see a lot of addressing the core causes of poverty here.
The provincial government is continuing to place the province's debt on the backs of students.
Provincial spending is up as the province releases its budget. Government continues its record spending, but is passing on some short-term savings to you.
Good evening, I'm Anthony Germain, live at the Confederation Building.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Today's provincial budget is aimed at staying the course as the province comes out of the COVID-19 pandemic.
And considerable spending in health and in education. We're going to go from 4 health authorities in this province down to 1, and all of this happening on the very same day as the federal budget. Carolyn Stokes and I and the entire Here and Now team will break down this budget for you. Siobhan Cody introducing her 3rd budget in just 18 months. Imagine that, 3 budgets for a finance minister in less than 2 years, unheard of in political history. The theme of this budget, change is in the air. Have a look.
This budget is about us, about what we all want to achieve, a stronger, smarter, self-sufficient, sustainable Newfoundland and Labrador. How we do that is as important as why we do it. Our principles must be grounded in a healthy, educated, growing population, responsible financial management, a clean, green economy, a modernized, innovative public service, and true reconciliation with our Indigenous people.
There are so many issues to break down this evening. I'll start with my colleague Peter Cowan, who joins me live as well. So much talk, Peter, heading into this budget about the high cost of everything these days, gasoline, heating fuel, food. What is in this budget for people to help them make ends meet?
Anthony, change may be in the title here, and it's big in the title, but this is not a budget that's dealing with some big changes in terms of your pocketbook. There are a couple of small things that government has done here that is going to lower your cost for the next year. So let's break down exactly where you're going to see those. So the first one is the cost of registering a car or a truck. It's going to be cut in half. So instead of paying around $180, it's going to be $90, but it's just for 1 year. House insurance is another area you're going to see a change. There's not going to be any tax on it this year, so that's going to save you 15% when you renew your insurance this year, but again, that's just one-time relief. The province is calling this a budget with no tax or fee increases, but that's not entirely true. The carbon tax is going to go up on July 1st, so that's going to add about another 2 cents a litre to the price of gasoline, and it's going to give the province an extra $20 million this year.
We've taken a very, I think a very responsible approach, put money back where we could put money back, but we're also moving very, very strategically towards balanced budgets, because we don't want to have austerity budgets. You want to be able to get to a place where Newfoundland and Labrador is sustainable.
Originally, the plan was that as the pandemic wound down, that some government spending would wind down as well, but this year they decided to change that approach, and in fact, spending is up. They're able to do that because the economy is doing well. People are paying more taxes, businesses are paying more taxes, people are buying more things, so they're spending more and you're getting more HST because of it. So what does that mean to the overall finances? Well, let's take a look at the deficit. The provincial deficit is going down this year, $351 million. That's about $200 million less than they were expecting it would be just a year ago. Government is still promising that it will balance the budget by 2026.
A budget is about choice, and your government has chosen to support you, to invest in health, education, the economy, chosen to help you with the cost of electricity, chosen to support families with low-cost childcare and junior kindergarten.
Now, all of those choices add up. In fact, Carolyn, this year the province will spend $9.4 billion. That's about $400 million more than it spent last year.
All right, thank you so much for bringing us those highlights, Peter. That's Here Now's Peter Cowan reporting live. Well, the two big ticket items in the budget are healthcare and education. So let's take a look at healthcare first. The government is spending an extra $400 million in that department. Some of that money is for the Corner Brook Hospital and the new mental health facility in St. John's. Now, besides the increased spending, government is also moving ahead with a plan recommended by both Moya Greene and the Health Accord. Here Now's Peter Quinn joins us live with more on that. Mark, what more can you tell us?
Well, of course, when Moya Greene gave a report last year, she suggested some ideas for how to cut spending. And one of those ideas was cutting spending by 25% in healthcare. The budget doesn't announce that today. That's not going to happen. But the province is following one thing that she recommended and also was recommended by the Health Accord. They're going to amalgamate all 4 health authorities into one.
This is designed really to deal with back-end functions. It's not going to impact directly the front line. Our efforts at recruitment and retention and all the things that we spoke about recently with the nurses and with the physicians before them and with NAPE will continue. This is about streamlining administration, purchasing payroll, those kind of things.
Haggie said the province will be looking for someone new to lead the new health authority and that there will be no job losses on the front end, but provided no details beyond that. The union that represents thousands of healthcare workers in this province has concerns.
There is nowhere in healthcare right now where we can afford the loss of a single person. We're hearing every day what's happening in healthcare. One thing this pandemic done is shone a light on the issues that we have in healthcare that existed before the pandemic. There is no room for any type of cut.
The Progressive Conservatives want to see details too, but they say amalgamating health authorities is not where the government should be focusing its efforts.
When you have over 100,000 people without a family physician, that should be a priority. When you have people in this province who actually have to pay to see a primary care provider, that should be a concern. These are the things the minister should be focusing on. Simply changing the administrative structure of healthcare doesn't do anything to address those issues.
Now, the health minister did respond that the province is doing things to improve access to healthcare, such as building primary healthcare clinics here in St. John's and other areas. As for the single health authority, Haggie says that should take between 18 months and a year to build. Live in St. John's, I'm Mark Quinn for Here and Now.
Well, the NDP is also raising concern over amalgamating the 4 health authorities into one.
When I was around, we amalgamated the 4 school districts into one. So I can tell you that the promise was to find efficiencies and to put that money back into the classroom. And I would have to argue that you would be hard-pressed for most teachers to show if they had seen that on the ground. So it's going to come down to the devil in the details. What do you mean by efficiencies and how is that money going to be reinvested?
Okay, so the other area seeing increased spending is education. There's $3 million extra for teaching services because of the rising student population. This is the first time in 50 years that enrollment has been up, with a projected increase of 1,000 students. That's nearly $17 million to alter and improve schools in the province, $10 million over 2 years to convert the former School for the Deaf into a K-12 Francophone school. Grades 7 to 12 will start classes there this September. And there's money going towards planning the construction of new schools. A new school is planned for Cartwright, Labrador, one for Portugal Cove, St. Philip's, and a new school in Kenmount Terrace in St. John's. The government also plans to redevelop Dorset Collegiate on Pilley's Island in central Newfoundland. Well, the government is continuing its plan to cut funding to Memorial University. It's maintaining the operating grant, but continuing to phase out the tuition freeze. MUN President Vian Timmins says despite knowing that, it's still challenging.
So for the university, it's a tough budget, right? But we knew it would be. Government had indicated to us that they would be a series of cuts over the next 5 years. Absolutely a challenge for us. We have to now manage inflation and a number of other things. And as we know, the energy costs are skyrocketing, which is really significant for the university. And as an economic driver in this province, you know, if I was an investor, I would invest in a business, an organization that generated revenue, which we do for the province. So it is a challenge for us.
So where is the money coming from? Revenue will grow by about $500 million this year, projected to top $9 billion. And much of the credit for that increase can be found in our abundant natural resources. But oil is no longer the economic juggernaut it used to be. Here and Now's Terry Roberts joins us live from the newsroom to explain. Terry.
Yeah, well, Carolyn, let's take you back a decade here, I guess, where royalties from oil and gas accounted for 32% of government revenues. I guess you could say we're a bit of a one-trick wonder back then. Well, this year, finance officials say just $1 in $10 flowing into the Treasury will come from oil. And where oil has certainly tailed off, the mining sector is taking flight.
First, to the offshore. Thursday's budget revealed that oil production will plunge by 12 million barrels this year to just over 82 million barrels. That's because production is down significantly at Hibernia, where drilling was suspended 2 years ago because of the pandemic, and maintenance shutdowns are planned for other producing fields. The consequence, offshore royalties will fall to under $900 million, down about $250 million from last year. But where oil production is slumping, the mining sector is soaring. Mineral exports from the province topped $6 billion last year, up 35% over 2020, driven by strong markets for iron ore, nickel, and copper. And employment in the mining sector was up nearly 18%, sparked by the ongoing expansion at Voisey's Bay.
There's no doubting the fact that with the commodities up and the hot streak that they've been on and is projected to continue, I do think it's been amazing just when you see the claim staking that's going on, the exploration that's going on. There is money that's being expended throughout the province, rural and especially in rural. Labrador continues to chug along like just amazing.
Our reliance on that revenue from our oil industry, while incredibly important, is what we're seeing is a diversification in our economy and a growth, for example, in mining industry.
So a day after politicians and industry celebrated environmental approval for the Bay du Nord project, today's budget is a reminder of the volatility of oil and gas.
But the slump in oil production, well, that's expected to be short term. Now, Hibernia, they're going to resume drilling later this year, which should result in an increased production. And the Terra Nova FPSO, well, it's in Spain undergoing a major refit and should be back on the Grand Banks in 6 or 7 months. So while the mining sector is certainly on an upswing, oil and gas, it appears, will continue to really help drive the economy for years into the future. Reporting live from the newsroom, I'm Terry Roberts for Here and Now.
So we've taken a look now at natural resources just there with Terry, particularly mining. I think one of the surprises opening up the budget today is how much mining and taxes really help put the government in a better position. Joining me now to analyze this is Larry Short. He was in the lock-in today with us. And so, Larry, we've taken a look at some of the specifics. What's your overall sense of the meaning of this budget? Well, what's your takeaway?
It's a bit of a surprise. It really sounded more like an election budget. For the last number of years now, we've been expecting to hear something about cuts that are going to be made because, again, we still have a massive deficit and we're subject to the whims of the world economy. So in this particular case, what we saw was that expenses went up again, revenue went up more, and that revenue figure is the number that we cannot control. So we've been expecting that at some point we would get a budget that would start cutting expenses, and that's not what we saw here today.
No, and this is far from an austerity budget, right?
Yes, very much so. I mean, it's a few cuts here and there. There's some indications that the changes coming, but we've heard this for a long time. The statement is we don't want to kill the patient in order to cure the patient, but this would be a time that we would expect to say, here are the cuts that are coming, because we have a world economy that is booming. Commodity prices are up and looking like they're going to increase. But we also have interest rates start to rise, and that's usually at the end of a world economic boom. So the worry is that 2-3 years from now, we go into a recession just as commodity prices are turning down, revenue starts to dry up a bit.
Right.
Interest rates go up even further, and at that time, or just before the recession, they tend to go up even further. And then we need to refinance a larger deficit.
Right.
So that's where we can tip off that edge again.
But I don't want to think that you're full of doom and gloom. Clearly, what's moved in the deficit is is a significant move in the right direction.
Correct, but the reason why the deficit has been reduced is because revenue has gone up because commodity prices have risen.
Right. I think one of the big surprises, perhaps to some people watching tonight or watching the budget coverage throughout the day, is the decision to amalgamate all of the health authorities. We've had 4. Moya Green said this is something that should be done in her report. The Health Accord alluded to it. What's your take of that step?
It's a step in the right direction. I mean, again, the Green report laid out, here is the plan. Here's what you should follow in order to address the long-term deficit. I've been asking for what is the long-term plan. It's been a theme that's been recurring over the last 3 budgets in particular. So it's a start. We need more of that.
Okay. Larry, you're going to join us back a bit later in the show, so we'll talk to you then. Larry has some very interesting notions and ideas about minerals and natural resources, and he actually asked a question of Andrew Parsons today. We're going to talk about minerals when we come back a bit later on Here and Now.
It's not just the provincial budget today. The federal government delivered its budget about half an hour ago. One of its goals is to return spending to pre-pandemic levels. But there is some new spending. Most of it is spread out over the next 5 years. The deficit is lower, half of what it was last year. The 2022-23 deficit projection is $52.8 billion. And as I mentioned, there is some new spending, a third of it going towards tackling the rising cost of housing. The government is spending $10 billion on housing initiatives. It's introducing a tax-free savings account and tax credit for first-time homebuyers. It's implementing a 2-year ban on foreign home buyers and doubling new home construction. And there's funding for a national dental care program, $5.3 billion over the next 5 years. It's also promising money for mental health care and dealing with the opioid crisis. And there's new spending for defense and for Ukraine, $8 billion in total. Part of that is to increase Canada's military capabilities. There's aid for Ukraine and money to address cyber attacks. So stay with us. We'll have a breakdown on this federal spending in about 30 minutes on Here and Now.
Kind of a bit of a historic moment, as I alluded to off the top of Here and Now. Tonight, Siobhan Cody introducing her 3rd budget in 18 months. Imagine 3 budgets in less than 2 years. The finance minister will join me right after the break.
Temperatures very different across the province depending on where you were. We are looking at a warm up in some cases as we head towards the weekend. I'll have the full forecast coming up.
Change is in the air is the theme of Siobhan Cody's third budget. Maybe some change left in your pockets as well. Joining me now is Newfoundland and Labrador's Minister of Finance. So, Siobhan Cody, it's remarkable for any politician, any finance minister, 3 budgets in 18 months. What stands out to you about this one?
I guess the fact that we've been consistent and supportive in moving towards financial management and a better fiscal situation for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, one that's more sustainable. So if you go back 18 months ago, our deficit was $1.8 billion.
Yeah.
And then last year I said it was going to be $826 million. We ended up the year at $400 million, and this one is going to be $351. We're moving towards balanced budget. Secondly, we were able to take childcare from from $35 a day down to $25 my first budget, $15 last year, and now in this budget down to $10. So I think those are that's remarkable progress over 18 months.
There is certainly, I think, going through the budget today and the lock-in, there's lots of, positive news in it and positive announcements. We've covered them tonight, for instance, the decision to reduce insurance on houses, cutting off the price of getting our vehicles registered, and those kinds of things. But with respect to what actually got you there, it seemed to me that mining and tax revenue helped you a lot. And I'm wondering how much of this is things that are out of our control, world prices of commodities, things that we can't control. What actually got us there?
Well, I think a stronger and diversified economy got us here. So when you look at the lower deficit, it is because of things like a stronger economy, better mining returns, better financial returns for corporations in general. That's what's helped us bring down the deficit, and we're seeing that again in 22-23. I do want to remark that the price of oil may be up, but our production actually is down offshore Newfoundland and Labrador in the next year because Hibernia and Hebron are coming off. So oil is giving about 10% of our revenues,
right,
which is significantly lower than, the last decade it was as high as 32%.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing is a strength in the economy, a diversified economy, and we're looking for that to continue over the next, foreseeable future, and we're still continuing to grow. Matter of fact, yesterday's announcement with Equinor is a strengthening again of that economic opportunity going forward for Newfoundland and Labrador. So overall, really positive. Things are looking good for Newfoundland and Labrador, and we've been working really hard towards that stronger, sustainable province that we all want.
I think there's certain people may have thought that we might be facing an austerity budget, given the fact that you only came into power this time. A year ago, and I wonder if part of you sort of looks at the fact that overall spending is up once again, and do you have any regrets about that? Because you were part of the Ball government where people, I think Premier Ball sort of recognized that we got to try to get spending under control. I mean, how do you get the balance right? Because I know you're saying this is a balanced budget, but spending keeps going up.
Spending is only going up in certain areas. In health, we all know that we have concerns around our healthcare. We want to attract more people into healthcare. We need to attract doctors. We need to attract nurses. Make sure they're well paid and well supported. There's a change in the way medicine is being provided, and that's why we have collaborative care clinics. So you're absolutely right. Expenditures are up in healthcare, and they've ticked up a little bit in education. But we have 1,000 new students in our educational system this year. So we have to make sure we have the supports there to support those 1,000 new students. I will also say, though, the rest of government has held the line on expenses. We are holding the line, meaning that there are no new increases in Department of Finance, in municipalities, in infrastructure. We're holding the line and really doing a good job. And that's paying dividends for our financial management.
I've only got about 30 seconds left. I'm going to ask a completely hypocritical question now.
Yeah.
Because some people don't think you're spending enough on people on the lower end of the income scale. Inflation is really cutting into some of the benefits you've announced for seniors and for certain families on lower income. Why couldn't you do more for them at this time where everybody's complaining about how expensive everything is?
Yeah, I wish we could do more, and that's what we're trying to achieve. As I said, we've increased our income supplement by 10%, increased our seniors benefit by 10%, given money back to income support. those are very, very big programs that we want to make sure we're supporting people. 160,000 people are getting an increase. Is it enough? Of course we'd like to do more. That's why we're so focused on making sure that we lower our cost of borrowing. And you have to remember that we're spending $1 billion a year, close on it, in borrowing costs. So before we even start our budget, there's $1 billion that we have to put towards that. So we'd love to do more, and we will do more. But you have to remember in this budget, it's actually that we're helping people in their pocketbooks, and that's a very good thing for a budget to be able to do.
Okay, Siobhan Cody, thank you very much. Let's hope that we don't have another budget within the next 4 or 5 months. You don't want to do 4 in less than 2 years, right?
No, we're looking forward to 12 months' time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Bonus deadline is midnight tonight. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Ashley, last night you were saying that today, Budget Day, was going to be a great day for all those reporters to be in the lockup at Confederation Building, and it certainly did pan out that way. Not the greatest day in St. John's.
No, not really anywhere along the northeast coast, unfortunately. The further away you got from the coast, the nicer the weather, definitely. Let's take a look at those temperatures for southern areas of the island. Look at that, 8 degrees, 9 degrees at Burgeo, 8 in Stephenville. You head a little bit further north though, and those temperatures cool right off. So about 1 degree is what it's sat most of the day at Gander, -1 in Twillingate, and even above zero temperatures for parts of Labrador. Lab City sat around 2 degrees for a good chunk of the afternoon today. And the reason for that is that area of low pressure, that onshore northerly flow, which we do typically see in spring, and normally the nicest weather is down along the southern areas of the island. Big ridge of high pressure to the north. It is keeping things quite calm for those areas, but overall temperatures today not great, and currently still sitting around 1 degree in St. John's. Lots of fog and drizzle around with those winds generally out of the north, feeling out of the north 24 kilometers per hour with those gusts around 33. So it is feeling a little cooler, more like -4, but like I said, sunshine peeking out in Burgeo today and this evening. So great day for sure. But as we head through the next couple of days, we are looking at our next weather maker moving in, an area of low pressure currently over Ontario that is going to move in by Friday night into Saturday. It is going to warm things up, but the winds are going to ramp up as well. So tomorrow that ridge high pressure will keep winds relatively light. Finally, and then as we head through Friday night into Saturday, as that area of low pressure moves in, particularly the southwest, we're going to see some pretty gusty conditions, 80 to 100 kilometers per hour through the overnight into the first half of Saturday. So Environment Canada has issued a rec house wind warning for that time frame, and you're looking at those winds gusting about 100 to 110 kilometers per hour through the overnight and into Saturday. Currently, like I showed you, about 1 degree in St. John's, but those temperatures still very nice for the southwest. Stephenville sitting still at 8 degrees, and then up across Labrador, your temperatures are hovering around -3 for Makkovik right now, with that wind chill feeling more like -9. Now, as we head through the night tonight, we're not going to see a whole bunch of change in the temperatures overall, except where you're seeing those warm temperatures. -2 for Corner Brook tonight, and -1 for Marystown, and then up across Labrador between -3 and -6. Again, the winds, the further east you go, closer to that area of low pressure, will be a bit brisk out of the north between 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. Now, taking a look at the future tracker, there's not a whole lot to talk about, but it will be unsettled through a good chunk of the night tonight, with that potential for some flurries sticking around. Again, nicest weather to the south and the west. And then through a good chunk of tomorrow afternoon as well, we continue to see that onshore flow, flurries, freezing drizzle possible through the day, but the best chance of seeing that sunshine will be for the south and the west tomorrow, with some snow moving in as we head through the evening hours on Friday, and eventually getting a little bit more unsettled as we head into Saturday as well for some of the island. Temperatures tomorrow, not really going to move too much from today, pretty much a carbon copy. 1 degree for St. John's, either showers, flurries, or freezing drizzle possible, with those winds out of the north a little less, 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Similar forecast through central, southern areas of the island. Harbour Breton sitting around 6 degrees tomorrow, and a similar forecast for the west. Wind winds generally light, between 10 to 15 kilometers per hour. More unsettled as you head towards the northern peninsula, but you will likely see some sunshine for coastal areas of Labrador through the day as well. And then as you head towards the west, again, we'll see that flurry activity and light snow move in late day with a temperature around -1. Now the next system is going to move in Friday evening into Saturday. This one looks like it could bring the potential for some freezing rain to start on Saturday morning, eventually changing to rain as some of the warmer temperatures come in, even more warmer air as we head into Sunday, but I'll have those full forecasts coming up.
So some of the increases that we're seeing, through the budget here is not really enough to weather the economic storm that so many folks are facing.
The cost of living is on the rise, but what about people who are already struggling to stay afloat? We'll speak with the director of End Homelessness St. John's coming up. Well, the budget offers some nuggets of savings for many taxpayers in the province. There's a break on sales tax on home insurance for a year, and it'll cost 50% less to register your vehicle. But what about low-income earners who may not own a home or a vehicle? What's in it for them? Well, there is a 10% increase in both the income supplement and seniors benefit. Joining me now is Doug Pawson, the Executive Director of End Homelessness St. John's. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you work with vulnerable people who are living on the poverty line. What were you hoping to see in this budget for them?
Yeah, I was hoping to see a bit more of an ambitious agenda around poverty reduction, particularly investments into housing and homelessness. You referenced in the opening the challenges that folks who are low-income earners face who may not own a home or own a vehicle. And so some of the increases that we're seeing, through the budget here is not really enough to weather the economic storm that so many folks are facing. Just as an example, the 10% increase for the low-income supplement program for somebody earning the maximum a year, that's an additional $45. So I don't know how much that's going to help in the long run for folks who are really those who are the most vulnerable in our community.
And with the cost of living on the rise, it seems everything is getting more and more expensive, and it's getting harder and harder for some people to get by. What kind of stories do you hear from people about what life is like right now?
Yeah, the challenge around the rising cost of the private rental market is really critical. It's something that we've seen in St. John's and around the province, to be honest, serve as a big challenge. So those rising costs of rental rates, for example, without increases to income support rates or without increases to minimum wages, lower income wages, that struggle is getting more and more challenging to navigate. Lots of folks making trade-offs between their rent, their food and grocery bills, or their heating costs. And at some point, that's going to catch up to a lot of folks in our province. So we definitely need to see a lot more action on this, more ambition around poverty reduction moving forward.
And what kind of action, what kind of ambition are you thinking? What would really make a difference to people who are struggling right now?
Yeah, for those who are receiving income support, for example, they haven't received an increase in over a decade now. So increases to that would allow folks to have a more realistic chance to enter the rental market and sustain themselves in that. Low income wages are a big driver of poverty, particularly for women and children across the province. So, higher wages that are not just indexed to CPI, but are really moving towards that living wage. More investments into deeply affordable housing as well. There's housing shortages and supply constraints across the province. So those will go a lot further, those investments into at least alleviating the cost of living in the short run. And then more ambition around long-term approaches to poverty reductions, those structural inequalities that we need to address in the long run. That can't be addressed simply by increasing 10% to low-income supplements, which are already not enough.
Well, Doug Pawson, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks, Ian.
Well, that's one critique of today's provincial budget, but there was plenty of other reaction outside of the House of Assembly this afternoon as the finance minister brought down the budget.
Well, I think there's some good things in the budget that will help the overall determinants of health, which is helping the average person save a little bit more money so that they can buy decent food and that sort of thing. Those are good things. On a downside is I didn't see anything particular that's going to stop the crisis that we have in healthcare, primary healthcare in Newfoundland and Labrador, but overall healthcare in Newfoundland and Labrador. And that concerns me greatly.
They didn't hit their target on expenditure reduction, which I think is critical. It shows intent that they're serious about doing it. They're only $250 million above what they said they were going to do. They had to make some investments in healthcare. That's probably warranted. The thing of concern, I think, to the people of the province is that the interest on the province's debt is growing exponentially, right? So there's another $40+ million that we have to pay just in interest. And we're spending more on interest on the province's credit card than we are on education, social services combined.
We are very disappointed to see that the provincial government has committed to not funding the tuition freeze. So losing that is a big blow for students all across the province. We are disheartened to also see that the provincial government is continuing to place the province's debt on the backs of students.
I think a lot of workers in Newfoundland and Labrador are breathing a sigh of relief because they expect to see cuts and job loss, which hasn't happened. And we see some impact, Jeremy, in that budget where workers have actually made a difference. Just in healthcare, for example, right in the budget, talking about increased paramedics in central Newfoundland and Metro, increased LPNs, PCAs. That's because they went to the side of the street and were able to influence those decisions. And the minister in that case, in fairness, listened to them.
There was a lot of things that were not mentioned that concern us. One of the good pieces that we heard was that the debt deficit is getting under control, and that there's an anticipation that we'll be in a surplus budget in 25-26. Having said that, I'm not sure why they want to implement balanced budget legislation. To us, that's a very bad piece of legislation on many fronts. Number one, it ties government's hands. It could be used as an excuse for cutting essential services that we've been talking about how important it is, especially with the other crises that we have right now in our economy.
We believe there are a number of positive indicators in the budget that speak well for the economy. Population increase is one positive, certainly, and specifically in regards to young people in schools. Reduction of the deficit is an important metric for us, obviously, and I think diversity in the economy, particularly as it relates to reduction in our reliance on oil and gas in particular, and how that moves to the future.
One of the surprises in today's budget was the impact that mining revenues and royalties has had on this province. There is another commodity, an opportunity for Newfoundland, and that's copper, but maybe we need to act very, very soon. Larry Short will join me with that story coming up.
Let's turn our attention back to the federal budget now. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland delivered that budget about an hour ago. It's the first budget from the Liberals since being re-elected with a minority government last September and since entering into a deal with the NDP for its support in Parliament. As Travis Danraj reports, this year's spending plan includes a focus on affordability and housing.
Amid a global backdrop of uncertainty, Chrystia Freeland delivered a document meant to reassure Canadians.
Now is the time for us to focus, with smart investments and a clarity of purpose, on growing our economy and on making life more affordable for Canadians.
Affordability is a theme throughout. On housing, a tax-free savings account and a tax credit for first-time home buyers, along with a 2-year ban on foreign home buyers and a doubling of new home construction.
The time for extraordinary COVID support is over.
With pandemic spending slowing, there's a move toward reduced spending on programs overall. The government is also predicting strong growth over the short term, but is moving to address some warning signs ahead.
The numbers look a bit optimistic, like with respect to real growth, the size of the economy, nominal GDP.
Something that could impact overly optimistic projections, the growing crisis in Europe. As predicted, there is more money for defense and Ukraine in this budget, $8 billion overall, $6.1 billion over 5 years to increase Canada's military capabilities, $1.5 in additional aid for Ukraine.
$8 billion, though, isn't a ton of money for an organization that's that big, and I think it's a bit of a missing the moment.
The first step is being taken on a promise to the NDP to deliver a national dental care program, $5.3 billion over 5 years. Promises, too, on more money for mental health, the opioid crisis, and increasing Canada's stockpile of supplies should another pandemic or disaster hit. On creating a clean economy through green jobs, plans to create a new government agency that will focus on innovation and investment, but no real details on what it will look like, and new incentives for clean technologies and carbon capture. The opposition says the budget doesn't provide enough help to Canadians quickly enough.
With every budget that these Liberals deliver, they spend more, which results in the cost of everything going up. So I'm very concerned that with their increased spending, everything will continue to go up. It's not a good budget. It's an irresponsible budget. Conservatives will not be supporting it.
Overall, this budget aims to return to pre-pandemic spending levels. Most is spread out over 5 years, an indication the Trudeau government is confident it has some time, thanks in part to that new deal with the NDP. Travis Danraj, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, from the Canadian budget back to the Newfoundland and Labrador budget, as you've seen this evening, one of the surprises, the royalties, particularly from iron ore and mining, and some interesting discussion today in the budget lockup with Larry Short, our expert and analyst, and it has to do with a potential opportunity. So shifting gears a little bit away from today's budget and more to an opportunity for the province. Larry, let's talk about copper and other resources.
Yes, so I keep coming back to the idea of what's the plan for the province? How does the province transition away from being dependent on oil? So that side is the world would like Newfoundland and Labrador rocks. Basically, there's a monstrous opportunity to provide the metals that are needed to electrify the world, and this province is ideally located for many reasons, including geography, to supply the world with things like copper, nickel, cobalt. We heard about
lithium.
Lithium's recently been discovered, and we heard about Vale and supplying,
nickel to Tesla, maybe,
to Tesla, etc. But also within that extraction, there's also cobalt, right? So what the world wants is these metals extracted, processed, smelted, and potentially even manufactured using things like wind energy or hydropower.
Right.
And the key for the province, though, is the fact that right now, if we had a major discovery of, say, copper, it would still take 10 years in order to turn it into a mine. And that window for development, for really getting ahead in the world, has to be shorter than 10 years. So I was hoping to hear something about a strategy focusing on this relative advantage that this province has over just about everywhere else on earth. And the term relative advantage is really important because our relative advantage in the past was fish. We had fish, we sold fish. We had oil, we sold oil. That was our relative advantage. And this is a huge relative advantage for this province.
What can we do to actually sort of get our act together to move more quickly on it?
Look to Alberta. Alberta has put together effectively a committee and actually passed an act that gives a single point of contact where mining companies can come into the province and say, we need to get this developed fast, and it helps cut through all of the bureaucracy and administration within the government in order to accelerate the development. And the key here is you cannot cut environmental standards because that just invites lawsuits.
Right.
So you have to have the highest environmental standards for the world to accept your metals, as well as being able to say to these companies, hi, you're taking a risk of developing, say, lithium if there's ever enough discovered,
right.
But it's going to take you 10 years. Are you willing to put in $6-8 billion on a risk that's obsolete by the time that it goes into production?
Okay.
So it has to be a way to accelerate it through.
All right. Certainly interesting to actually talk about solutions instead of pointing to problems. And I know that Larry actually asked this question today of Minister Andrew Parsons, and he seemed to take note. So who knows, maybe your phone will ring tomorrow.
Well, we'll look forward to having that chat.
Right, Larry. Thank you so much for your help and analysis once again. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
It's Larry Short now, of course. Now the job for the Finance Minister and Minister Andrew Parsons, Natural Resources. They're going to be meeting tomorrow, and they're going to sell this budget and convince the people of the province, or try to, that this is a budget that serves the interests of the province.
Okay, it's weather time. I can't believe tomorrow's Friday and then it's the weekend. I'm looking forward to hearing about Sunday. But before we get to that, this week was Literacy Week at Amalgamated Academy, and you paid the students a visit, right?
I did, virtually, of course. But yes, got a chance to read to them yesterday. Didn't get a chance to show you this photo because of the show, but let's take a look at that. That's Miss Daniel's class, grade 5. Read a little bit of a weather story first, and then we talked about a lot of questions. They had lots of questions. Some of them were about astronomy, which they kind of put me on my toes, but that's okay. And then obviously some other weather questions. And there was lots of weather to talk about, certainly today, as we take a look at the forecast as we head into Friday evening and into Saturday. That's when the next significant weather maker is going to move in. We're going to see the potential for a few flurries, or rather light snow up across Labrador. But then the risk that we'll see some freezing rain, at least the first part of Saturday for a good chunk of the island. It should quickly transition through to some rain as we head through the afternoon, and that's because the temperatures are eventually going to warm up a couple of degrees above zero as we head into the afternoon hours. There's your temperatures for your Saturday, hovering around the 1 degree mark for St. John's. Again, mainly rain event, but it may start as some freezing rain. And then Labrador will eventually see the temperatures jump up above zero, so you may see some rain in the mix for Happy Valley Goose Bay into the afternoon on Saturday. Now Sunday looks pretty nice. That's going to set the stage for some warmer temperatures, still anticipating that we'll bump up to about 9 to 12 degrees across a good chunk of the island, and we'll likely see some sunshine at least to start, because the next system's going to move in and it's going to bring some rain with it. Up across Labrador, even Happy Valley Goose Bay reaching a high near 8 degrees. It looks like 5 in Cartwright. Going to keep things cool for Lab City though. Again, some rain or showers or flurries rather through the day on Sunday. After that, though, as we head into Monday, Tuesday, unfortunately, we'll return to those cooler temperatures, also the risk of some showers or flurries through the afternoon on both days. And then for central Newfoundland, you're looking at a similar forecast, 4 or 5 degrees through the day, but a little bit warmer for western Newfoundland. And we may even see some sun peeking out on Tuesday for you as well in the west, where you'll see your temperature up above zero, around 7 degrees, but your overnight lows will dip back down. It looks like down to about -6, so not too bad. And then for eastern Labrador, a nice day on Sunday, but Monday we'll return to some unsettled conditions. And then same thing on Tuesday, temperatures should stay above zero right through Tuesday. And then we're looking at those temperatures above zero for western Labrador as well. But whatever does fall will likely fall as flurries. Now the photo of the day today, spring calf near Middle Cove. Lisa shared this great shot with us. I thought that was just lovely.
Oh, it
Not
is.
quite green grass yet, but
a
beautiful.
Calf? Is that a little?
That's what it is, yeah, spring calf.
Oh,
just born.
The middle cow.
That's right. If you have any weather photos that you'd like
cow.
to share with us, send to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
I bet the province.
I knew that.
I bet the province wishes it were a cast.
Agriculture was.
We're just talking over each other. You go ahead, Anthony. You go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think we've mentioned every industry in this province except agriculture, and it found a way to squeeze its way into our budget coverage. So I'm really happy that no one can complain now.
There you go.
I wanted to make a joke about cash cow, but.
There's lots of jokes about that to be made.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for all that coverage up there, Anthony. It was great. And thanks to everyone at home for watching.
See you tomorrow.
Good night.